1, 2, 3, and we are live. Okay, maybe I should. Okay, I'll have to sit down. Yeah. Okay, so good afternoon, and for those joining us online, morning or evening, depending on what's your time. And this is one of our open sessions, and people are also watching us on YouTube or live stream. This session is on what's called a youth collation. And before we jump in, what is youth collation, and I explain and our panelists talk, I would like to ask any of you, do you know what a youth collation is? Or what a collation is? Maybe online. Any ideas? Okay, we have from Sally. I'm sorry.
Multiple youth organizations coming together, joining together, collaborating.
Okay, so Sally said multiple youth organizations collaborating together for a common goal. I'd say this is, yeah, more or less correct. So a collation basically is a collection of whether it's youth or not. So the word collation in general is a collection of parties working to go towards a particular goal. Mostly it would be political or societal. And when we are talking about youth collations, we are referring to the idea that obviously not a single youth can work alone. We work as organizations, but also when multiple organizations work together, we make our voices more heard, we make our echoes louder, and we're able to gather more momentum to achieve our common goals, depending on what that collation is about. And for this, we have gathered today 3 of our panelists who are parts of youth organizations or organizations that work together to form what's called a youth collation. And I'll start to introduce them one by one, starting with our panelists joining us live, Abdulkarim Taib, if you would like to join us here. Abdulkarim is a policy and campaign consultant with the NCD's Alliance, supporting the organization's work around non-communicable diseases, prevention, and the Global Week for Action. His academic background is the medical science and public health. He was awarded a UK Commonwealth Scholarship to complete a master's degree in public health. He has also previous experience as an intern at WHO headquarters. And second, we have joining us online, Ms. Colleen Matar, Dr. Colleen Matar. She's an assistant professor of medicine at the Washington University in St. Louis. She was the past chair of the Junior Doctors Network of the World Medical Association, which she also served as an advisor of infectious diseases, public health, and antimicrobial resistance. She has completed her medical school training at the American University in Beirut, Lebanon. Her research focuses on the discrimination and implementation of infectious diseases. She also chairs the expert advisory group of Global Antimicrobial Resistance Research and Development Hub in Berlin. And lastly, joining us, our alumni and ex-vice president for external affairs, we have Ms. Egle. Hi, Egle, for joining us again. And okay, so other than Egle was previously vice president for external affairs, now she is a resident doctor of the dermatology in Lithuania, previously trained in Switzerland, France, and Italy, and she's the part of the newly established Lancet Child and Adolescent Health Use Advisory Panel, vice chair of healthcare constituency at Partnership for Maternal Newborn and Health Child, hosted by the World Health Organization and a Woman Deliver Young Leader. Thank you all three of you for joining us today. And today will be a panel discussion, questions directed by me to you. And then we'll have an open floor for the participants here and online to ask questions to our panelists. And with this, I will ask the first question to all our panelists. The first question is, what is the role of youth collation? And can you elaborate of an example of a youth collation that you are part of, a successful example of a youth collation that you're part of. And we'll start with Mr. Karim. Just look at the camera.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for inviting me to join today's conversation. In terms of youth coalitions, I mean, we've talked about it in terms of like the definition, but broadly, it's just the idea that young people can come together and not work in silos, and like either as an individual or as part of organizations, coming together and then going towards a goal. That's basically the idea behind youth coalition. If you're talking about the roles that they have in society, I mean, young people have they have the difference in terms of like what they entail. Okay, this is the microphone there.
This is the microphone and the speaker.
Okay, sorry. I was saying that in terms of youth coalitions, we are talking about, can you hear me? Should I stand up?
No.
Okay, so the idea of youth coalition is that young people can come together to work towards a goal. And that could mean either as individuals or as part of organizations. And we see that in different parts of our society. One thing I was speaking to was that young people have the characteristics of being different in society. So like the energy to mobilize, and that's one thing that could be a role for youth coalitions. I mean, if individual organizations are working towards a goal, by coming together, there could be like a mobilization of effort, of resources, of knowledge. We could have organizations that are maybe more into like medical sciences, working with organizations that are into like the policy spaces and politics towards maybe a goal around health policy, trying to push legislation in the House of Assembly, for example. That would be like working together with those different resources. Another thing that youth coalitions and youth groups in general could do is to activate things. So like the government could have projects in different places that are not moving as much as we wanted. And then youth coalitions could rally around and say like, yeah, we need this to be moving forward. We need action. And that's, I think, like a major plus for young people as well. So like the energy that we have, we can push it in those places. So it's not just about like saying that things can be done better, but we also have the capacity to actually get the work done and activate things in different places. Those are like my first thoughts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karim. And then we can have Dr. Colleen.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. Always a pleasure to be back to IFMSA events. What was not mentioned in my brief intro is I was for a long time an IFMSA member and one of the vice presidents back in the day. I will say that I will be soon transitioning out of the youth demographic, but certainly can elaborate on a few years of experience with youth coalitions in general. I do want to comment on coalitions. I think it was great to hear from the prior speaker about youth and the youth perspective. But anytime you truly want to achieve successful advocacy, it's very difficult to do that on your own. While you may be part of a large organization that is quite successful bringing agenda points forward, such as the IFMSA, there is definitely force in numbers, and there is also a power of persuasion, especially where you're thinking that you want to have hopefully affect policy change. So people, organizations, even individual groups come together to form coalitions that tend to, for the most part, bring forward a stronger message that is supported by a larger number of people. And this is where organizations with a large representative base also have power for that. But having said that, as I mentioned, even as individuals coming together in a space that allows individual voices to be represented can also bring a lot of positive outcomes, but also a lot of diverse voices to the table. I would say the youth part, I think as young people in the health space, we realized the power of coalitions a little bit later than other folks. And that's not to say that it's anybody's mistake. But youth in general were really always thought of as an afterthought, or more so, not really necessarily thought of at all. It wasn't until recent years that in the global health space, youth themselves forged that seat at the table, if you will. And I certainly applaud those of you who have been involved in that movement over the last several years, which got youth to be able to have this conversation and to be able to be present at various fora for global health. Certainly applaud IRIS, the IFMSA colleagues, folks from other organizations doing the same. So I think that that's what I want to stress, is that coalitions make you stronger. Having said that, they also have their own challenges, but I know we're going to touch on that here in a little bit. So I think I'll stop here on this question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was saying thank you, Dr. Colleen, and moving on to Dr. Egle.
Hi, everyone. If possible, I would like to have my slides. And before they are here, I just want to say that I was also LRA 2 terms before I was VP. And the last time that this event was actually happening in person to some extent was on my first term of LRA. So I'm so happy to see that part of you were able to gather here in Geneva. And it's exciting to see this event that is living on. So I'm also known to be a fast speaker, so please do give me signs if I will be going too fast at any point in this conversation. So the way I would like to speak about youth coalitions is through an example of one that I'm a part of currently, which is Governing Health Futures 2030, Growing Up in a Digital World, which is the Lancet and Financial Times Commission, and perhaps it is my favorite global health project. I will just briefly introduce it. So next slide, please. To be brief, the goal of this Lancet Commission was to explore how digital health, artificial intelligence, and other technology can converge with universal health coverage to support attainment of the SDGs. And I am sure that you must have covered UHC and SDGs many times during this workshop. And you already explored these concepts in this Youth PreWHA. And the idea of this commission was to come up with a set of recommendations in regards to governance of digital health and artificial intelligence. And in the next slide, you can see our stellar co-chairs and commissioners that are really accomplished people and a pleasure to work with. But I would actually like to shift your attention to the next slide, where you can see, besides the policy and research team, a lineup of my team of regional youth champions. And I would like to briefly talk to you about how youth can have a spotlight role in global health process through the lens of this specific project. So in this commission project, next slide, please. The Lancet and Financial Times Commission carried out a 2-part virtual youth global consultation with 35 youth participants representing 23 global organizations. So hence the coalition in this conversation. So during this project, if we may go to next slide, we developed a statement and a call for action, which was aimed to different stakeholders. And just to get back, this event was done in about February, and then the report itself was released later in autumn. So what I want to stress with this was that clearly youth played a role in a very early stage of this process and its development. And you may ask a question how this project that I'm talking about is different from other projects in terms of meaningful youth engagement. For me, the beauty of this specific project is that it is something that is living and dynamic, and that the youth engagement did not stop there. And I will talk more about this in the next question.
Egle, and picking up from your example, I would like to ask you and the other panelists, what is the key to the success of a youth coalition? Maybe we can start with Dr. Colleen.
Thank you. So I'm going to briefly go ahead and introduce the Global Health Workforce Network Youth Hub, which I suspect one of the reasons I'm here on this panel is because I chaired the Youth Hub. So I do consider it as a successful youth coalition, and I'll briefly tell you why. So back in 2017, there was a Human Resources for Health Global Forum in Dublin. At that time, so for Human Resources for Health, we're talking about health workforce, we're talking about doctors, nurses, pharmacists, allied health professionals, all the professions that come together to improve health and deliver health and social care. At that time, some of us were involved either in the student organizations or the early career professional organizations, and we had been involved for a long time on that agenda on a rather individual organization basis. So early career professionals, doctors, pharmacists, students were doing their own thing. That was an opportunity to come together for the first youth forum happening in the margins of that, that meeting, where it was youth-led, youth organized, but we were supported by the WHO and the Health Workforce Department. And this is where the idea came to bring people together, because we believed that we had the same goal, which is advocating for decent work, decent pay, gender equity, et cetera, in the health and social care workforce. So throughout that, what the idea of the Youth Hub was born, and this is where this hub now has 42 member organizations, but is led by a steering committee that represents most of the organized professions as students and early career as well. Throughout those years, we have done quite a few things. We were able to deliver on several policy documents, an advocacy toolkit that's coming out pretty soon. We've come together for various non-health workforce related topics, because up until very recently, as I mentioned, very few people were really into the youth agenda. And the hub was a platform, the logical platform by which we can, as health professionals, students in early career, come together and bring other young people together to talk about issues that were relevant for us for global health. Why was it successful? I think that it had its own challenges, but we were able to overcome those by realizing that we really need to focus on our common goal. It's not about fighting on small things, which tends to happen, I would say, very often in youth spaces, but really thinking about how do we best achieve what we all think is absolutely necessary, which is advocacy for decent work, for adequate pay, for more jobs, for education and better education for youth and early career professionals. So I think that the success comes from the realization that it's not a null sum. So if a specific organization or an individual in that coalition brings forward an opportunity, it doesn't mean it's an opportunity for the group. It's not an opportunity for that is taken away from somebody else. It's also realizing that it's not bickering over small little things, but also understanding that, number one, as youth, you do not need somebody to tell you what you need to do. You can self-lead, you can self-govern, you can do it very well, but you have to have a common agenda and common goal, and keep reiterating that this is why we're here, in order to alleviate any chance of smaller, let's say smaller hiccups that may come along the way. As long as you have the goal in mind, I think that such structures can be very successful, as I mentioned, in focusing on the similarities, forgetting about the differences, and making sure that voices are absolutely heard. The success of the Youth Hub bringing people around the table for issues not related to health workforce still amazes me until today. I think there was a void that the hub chose to fill, and filled it out very successfully. And I am certainly glad to see that WHO is planning on a youth council, even though it's taken quite a bit of time to take that weight away from the organizations, the hub, etc. I think that's definitely promising. But I think that that was an example where young people got organized, managed to get to their goal and beyond. And since the inception of the hub, there were very many other really great examples of young people coming together in various spaces and structures to get organized and to deliver a message. So I think that maybe 2 takeaway points is there needs to be a focus on a common goal, and there needs to be a focus on the similarities rather than the differences for success in youth coalitions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Colleen. And we can have the next interview from Ibrahim, if you wish. Let's move to the mic.
Okay. All right, thank you. I hope I'm audible enough. So in terms of the question on the key ingredients for success of youth coalition, I like the point of the last speaker on that joint interest. I think that's where I would like to start from. The success that we have seen in different sectors with young people in different places has been because of the joint interest to work together, whether it's in climate health or it's in non-communicable diseases, in HIV, the interest to work together, and then the values that they share. So like the value that every voice matters, let's listen to everyone. Those are things that push for success in terms of like working together. The other point for me really is, I think, in terms of what speaks to young people. So like young people, for example, are known to be able to leverage technology for different work. And I think that's something that young people can use as a strong effort in terms of achieving change. For example, in terms of something that I'm familiar with, I'm part of the NCD Child Young Leaders Program. And with the Young Leaders Program, we have different projects that we run. And over the last year, we've been doing different projects with the different teams that exist. And what we say across the different teams is that young people have basically used what they know. So we saw people leveraging social media, for example, to ask for change in terms of like obesity policy. We saw the development of different articles as regards major NCD topics, like people living with NCDs, and they also like did a research. I think the point is that young people can actually like come together, look at what everybody have in terms of their skills, whether it's research, whether it's social media management, whether it's technology analysis, data analysis, and then basically work together to achieve a common goal. I think that's where to start. And in doing all of this, just recognizing that everybody has a voice. So like whichever group of young people that we have working together, everybody has something that they can offer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last entry to the same question, Dr. Ibrahim.
Thank you. So I was thinking quite a lot about this question, and I've made some points. However, I don't want to repeat the other speakers, and really what Colleen has said is gold, and I think it should be framed and kept in mind for the youth coalitions in general about the fact that we have to have a common goal as youth coalitions. And perhaps I would like to go into a slightly different point because I think, as you've understood, the coalition that I was talking about was facilitated by an external who is somebody that are not youth themselves, but rather help youth to be involved in the process and help to form the said youth coalition. So I think that a key to have a really good example of youth engagement is to try to keep youth involvement at similar levels. But by similar levels, I don't mean levels of no youth involvement, good levels of youth involvement throughout different stages of any said project. Because also from my experience in IFMSA, I feel that we as youth are often invited to take part in different opportunities. But many of these times, these opportunities are sometimes limited to one single event. So let's say that you might be invited to give your opinion about a new paper that is coming in the early stage of this paper. Or for example, you might receive an invitation to speak in a United Nations General Assembly event. And I would say that this is already more than nothing. This could be significant, but it is important to see if there is any follow-up or not. And I think that the most successful examples of youth coalitions engagement is those where youth are participating in every part of the process. So as I've talked about the Lancet and Financial Times Commission, I want to outline that youth engagement did not stop with that paper, because already I think it was a milestone for young people in digital health, and it could have stopped there. But there were many different projects that came along to try to support it and to see what else youth needed. So if I may just move 2 slides. Thank you. So in the youth statement itself, there were many different calls for action for different stakeholders. And one of the calls that was mentioned as a need for youth was a network of young people talking about digital health and being able to share their experiences on global health and digital health intersections. So what we decided to do there was to create our very own youth network that now has around 200 members. That is, and this network is a perfect opportunity also for you, if you are interested, to stay engaged in Lancet and Financial Times Commission work on digital health. And there are different opportunities that are offered. So for example, different forms of media spotlight, capacity building, also with IFMSA, and so on. And last but not least, the Commission also developed Youth Regional Champions team that keeps in touch with the regional trends in digital health. And this is the team that I'm part of and that I've talked about in one of the first slides. And I do want to say, I think that this collaboration of youth coalitions is a beautiful example of how the project keeps going. And I think that the more parts the youth get the chance to give their voice, the more meaningful the project becomes. And if I may just go a few slides, or we can just go to the last slide, and also just, yes, the very last one, please. If you would like to join this coalition, you're also very welcome. And if you would like to learn more, you can see the Twitter handle and also our additional social media pages. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egle. And so we move on to our next question. And the question is, earlier we had a session here that was about barriers for youth engagement. And I would like to ask you the same question, but in the bigger concept or the bigger umbrella of youth coalitions. So what are the barriers that face youth coalitions? And maybe we can start with Dr. Egle.
So I also gave a lot of thought in this question through youth experience and many different parts of IFMSA, and then this project that I'm currently participating in and other projects. And I came up with 2 main things that I would like to outline. So the first one is tokenism. And I do feel that tokenism is still very much present in global health world. I think that this can pose a significant challenge for youth coalitions because some tough choices might need to be made. And this is something to be considered. And another thing that I want to note as well is there are 2 different ways to look from the next problem that I want to talk about, which is over bureaucracy of youth organizations. So on the one hand, I think one of the speakers meant that, and probably you as participants at some point have considered, have gone through this, that youth in many events are sometimes an afterthought. So for example, you're organizing something and then young people just get added at the very last second, and then you need to appoint somebody at the very last second, and it all gets very stressful. And from one side, I think there needs to be, obviously there needs to be much bigger consideration for youth speakers, youth advocates, and to see that they are treated in the same manner as all the other speakers and participants of these projects. But also I think that perhaps to be more successful for youth organizations, it would also be useful to try to reduce bureaucracy and to be able to react more urgent in some situations. And again, saying this, I know that this is hard to do, and you have to find a balance between having fair processes and then also reacting fast. But I think this is something also to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egle, for giving your experience in this question. And the next answer, Karim.
Okay. Thank you. I think it was good that we started from the question of the positive, and then if you're looking at the challenges, the major challenge that I see with the work that I do is in terms of like meaningful participation. Oftentimes, young people are just invited to the table to tick a box. They are not invited right at the inception of projects, which is what they will do with other stakeholders in terms of like planning. So like when things are being planned and having young people in the room to feed into the planning process and carrying them through that journey up to implementation. That would be like a major one for me. If all projects actually like think through these things, I think we would have more youth coalition and more participation of young people in different things. The other thing that I think about is in terms of support. I think that there's a lot more that can be done with supporting young people in different spaces, whether it's in health, it's in non-communicable diseases, the field where I work in, or even in general, like everyday life in communities. If young people are supported to understand that they have a voice and their voice counts, they would actually be doing more. We all want to be doing more. There are a lot of people in the room that want to actually participate in processes. But what we always say is that like there's not a lot of recognition to what young people bring to the table. So there's more that needs to be done in terms of that support. I mean, the WHO, for example, thinking about the youth council, it's a plus, but that's not moving as fast as we would want it. So like a lot of that needs to be happening across different places. Those are like my 2 points as regards challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. And lastly, Dr. Colleen would like to grace us with answering this question.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly agree with everything that was already mentioned by the other panelists, and building on what Egle mentioned about tokenism. This is a very delicate balance. When do you say this is absolutely tokenism and as a coalition or as youth, we just don't want to participate? And when do you say, I know it's tokenism, but we really need to be in that space? And that's really something that requires a lot of thought and a lot of maturity in some ways to be able to let go of a speaking opportunity. And I know that when I was significantly younger, a speaking opportunity was just this absolutely wonderful thing. So there was really no consideration in saying no to any of those. But this is key. As the more we move forward with youth involvement and engagement, the more we want to be able to think critically about what spaces, I am sorry about that, what spaces do we want to be present in where this is absolutely not a place that is authentic or that is really looking to engage youth. The other aspect is the bureaucracy, absolutely. But then I think we need to reflect on how do we position ourselves as youth coalitions. A lot of times we want to give an opportunity to a specific leader from the coalition to speak, etc. But what we really need to do is to position ourselves as the experts that we are in our topic, which is another very difficult decision to make whenever there is the bureaucracy that Egle really very nicely touched on. So if we have an expert who's not in a president position or an external facing position in the coalition or in the organization, is this the right person to represent us at the consultation or at a panel, etc.? And I do want all of you who are involved to really reflect on that, because whenever you bring in a true expert, and we have so many of those, it's not to say that, oh, because we're young, we really do not have expertise. There is a lot of expertise. It's very valuable. And that's something that we do not want to forget. And another barrier is certainly misalignment of priorities. So as a coalition, as a group, if the priorities are not really aligned with whatever is happening outside or amongst the members of the coalition itself, I think that would be a major challenge to move forward with any true meaningful engagement. And then lastly, and I touched on it before, internal competition between organizations, between individuals is meant to happen because we are all in this space, because we are leaders back in our countries on the international scene. It is the type of personalities that brought us here, but at the same time, it's important to forget a little bit what is this coalition giving to me as an opportunity, as opposed to what I can give back to the cause and the goal that I truly believe in. So in short, I think that take-home messages really reflect on what space we need to be present in and what space is trying to tokenize youth. Second is, let's think about bringing in the expert, irrespective of their position. And third, let's make sure that our priorities internally and externally are aligned. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer to our question. And now we have 5 minutes for questions. So I will ask the participants to just select one panelist, and I will kindly ask the panelists to keep their answers short so we have as much questions as we can. So now we start. Please come to the speaker and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Salman from India, and thank you so much for the inspiring words. I do believe that to some extent, administration in the form of bureaucracy is important to sustain organizations and work too. So where do we draw a line? When does bureaucracy become too much bureaucracy? Where is the line that needs to be drawn? And I want to direct this question to Egle.
Well, thank you so much. It is a great question. And the thing is that even though in IFMSA I have spent 3 terms and now I'm continuing in global health and other projects, and I do not have the answer for this because, as you've said, it's extremely delicate. And as you've said, it is true that there is certain strength when you do have this bureaucratization. It is strength when you, as an IFMSA, you have, let's say, specific opportunities concentrated to specific people. But sometimes there are going to be moments when this might not work exactly, and you might need to make a fast decision. And I think that this lines in quite well with what Colleen has said. I do not have the answer for you for this question. I think many things do need to be considered. But in the end, I think it's important not to lose opportunities because of bureaucratization, because I have seen it happen, unfortunately. Then again, who can say, is it the fault of young people if we do lose an opportunity? Because, for example, we were just contacted too late. And thank you for your question. I think that it really does give food for thought.
Thank you very much, Agri, for the answer. And we have multiple online questions, and we'll be starting with Elaine.
Yes, thank you so much. This is Elaine. I'm a medical student from Malaysia. So I think this question is about what is the harsh reality that you want the future generation to know about, particularly in youth coalition in global health field? Because we have listened to many positive sides, but what is a harsh reality that you want youth to know when they want to get engaged in this field of work, especially youth coalition? So I would like to direct this question to Dr. Colleen. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Elaine. This is a very, very good question. I would say that 2 main things that are a harsh reality. One is the internal fighting that can really block progress and really make the work absolutely a waste of time, to be very honest. And the second one is truly spaces that really do not want to engage youth. So, or want to pretend to engage youth, and those happen and are very, very frequent everywhere. So we may have made it sound rosy and pretty because the 3 of us happen to be part of very successful, coalitions and groups. But in reality, even some of us to get here have had to go through a lot of these particular challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your answer, Dr. Colleen. And the next question. Okay, so before we move to the next question, I'd like to ask our speakers if it's possible to ask for 5 more minutes of your time because we have multiple questions. So can you confirm you can stay with us for 5 more minutes? Okay. Okay, so we will be staying for 5 more minutes. And the next question we'll take from here, and then we'll be taking from here. Next question, Ibuka.
Thank you. My name is Ibuka. I'm a medical student from Nigeria. In the past, I was part of a youth coalition, and from my own experience, it seems that most times the people who usually make it hard for youth voices to be heard, they were once youth advocates themselves in one capacity or the other. So, and then whenever I'm in a youth gathering, the atmosphere is always like there's a conflict between us and them. And that's usually the case in most of the gatherings. So I'm just trying to understand, like, um, is it that it's like a cycle that when we are young, we are advocates, we campaign rigorously because we have the time, we have the energy, we have the passion. Then when we become older, everything changes. We are not the ones suppressing the youth. Like, is it like a cycle? You advocate while you're young, when you get older, then and you become the person telling you, oh, don't come to the table, just give us a contribution, we'll look into it. Like, is that like a cycle? That's just my question. Thank you.
Would I ask you to direct the question?
Yeah, sorry about that. My question is directed at Colleen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it appears to be a cycle. But having said that, though, it's a cycle that just started because in the past, I think young people weren't even asked their opinion. So I would tell you that in the last 10 years I've been in this space, I have seen tremendous progress. But yes, at least in the medical profession, which I can speak to because I've been on the student side and on the early career professionals side as well, the way of advocating, campaigning, etc., changes. Time becomes shorter, but it's not to say that coalitions of professionals and early career professionals don't do similar types of advocacy. They do. They just have staff members to do it for them, as opposed to volunteer work, which is what we see in student organizations. But yes, even within the medical profession, so the World Medical Association, to start an early career group, it took us significant time and effort and accepting a lot of things and going with the flow with things that were like, no, this is not your space. This is great, you're here, but sit in your corner and listen. And with a lot of patience, we got to a point where actually young physicians are very much at the table and really at the forefront of advocacy for the organization. So I would say it's very common. It is just about being patient, looking on the long run as to how do I engage youth sustainably, but not so much me as a person, but youth as a group. And I think everybody can certainly get there.
Thank you very much to your answer, Dr. Colleen. And I will ask, do we have any questions on site? Okay, though we move on to Ibrahim.
Okay, hello, I'm Ibrahim, medical student from Sudan. I just wanted to ask about when it comes to the youth coalitions, there's this step from where youth come together and we want to form a coalition, and then we want to cross and maybe make it something more official. So how do we cross that border from, okay, this is an informal coalition to becoming a formal sort of like a with a built foundation? And specifically, I would also like ask about how does the documentation really play into this, because I suppose it does. I would like to direct this question to Tayyip.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
Thank you for your question. I think the thing about transitioning from informal groups to like more formal processes or coalitions, it depends on where you are exactly and what that entails. So in some places, it might mean like actually registering or having more structure to what you have. I think that would be like the first place to start in terms of like, yeah, having some formality to what you do. And in some places, it might just be some form of engagement. So like maybe engagement with the authority, maybe it's the Ministry of Health, wherever you are. So that's sort of where you start thinking from if you are looking at formalizing your processes with the work that you do. In terms of documentation, it's actually quite important. I know we talked about bureaucracy, and then we also talked about internal fightings and where there can be conflict. The first thing is that it's not just a youth problem. So like, yeah, we might be saying it, but it's not just a youth problem. The older folks also have those problems. So we don't create them. So yes, documentation will be important, not just because of the presence, but also because of the institutional memory. You want to be able to like reflect on projects that you have done before, who did what, and having contacts, keeping those contacts. Those are like very important. Yeah, it's some effort to put those things in place, but they do matter. So I would advise like prioritizing it. And one thing that young people should also factor in with this is if you do not actually have the knowledge to like do this alone, so like in terms of like having structures in place or knowing the right documents to have. That's why we are talking about coalitions. You don't have to do it alone. You can work with other youth groups or individuals that have more knowledge in that space. Thank you.
And thank you for answering the question. And I would like to thank all our panelists, our IFMSA alumni, Alliance, GH Futures, and Global Health Purpose Youth Hub. And with this will be the end of our session, and we will be transitioning to our next session. Thank you to our panelists.